My daughter-in-law humiliated me in my own home, but my son revealed a truly incredible truth. Ruth stood in her kitchen, her once cozy realm transformed into a stage for confrontations. The fragrant spices and soft melodies she adored faded under the weight of silence and disappointment. Sarah's presence felt like a cold draft that swept through her sanctuary, twisting everything she believed made a house a home. Just moments ago, Sarah had made another biting comment, her laughter echoing around the spaces that had held warmth and love. "Is that how you cook, Ruth? No wonder Mark always orders takeout." How dare she? Ruth clenched her fists, a tumult of emotions, anger, humiliation, and a numbing fear choking her. Walking through the living room, Ruth felt the familiar ache of nostalgia sinking in. The framed photos of family vacations and small achievements were now overshadowed by Sarah's relentless ambition. How did this escalate to feeling like a stranger in her own home? The walls bore witness to laughter, celebrations, and a bond sharpened through trials, yet now they stood stolidly amidst a brewing storm. Mark always seemed to choose sides, his silent complicity weighing heavily on Ruth's heart. Was she not worth defending? Moments of shared vulnerability felt elusive as Sarah's barbed comments punctured Ruth like 1,000 tiny knives, leaving marks on her once spirited resolve. "Mark, you really need to talk to your mother about her outdated ways," she overheard Sarah say one afternoon, dismissing Ruth's pride in family traditions. The words slithered through the air, wrapping around Ruth and leaving her gasping for breath. The ache in her chest deepened. How could she reconcile the ambitious woman Sarah embodied with the identity she had fought to uphold? Memories of her years as a principal haunted her, the endless battles for respect in a profession that saw her not as a leader, but as a relic. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The air crackled with unspoken tensions as Mark organized a surprise dinner, a beacon of hope against the suffocating silence. Ruth busied herself with preparations, lost in thoughts of what once used to be the highlight of their family gatherings. But when Mark, with bright eyes and a broad grin, revealed Sarah's shocking secret, the air turned electric. "Sarah had a tough past," Mark explained, his voice steady. "She didn't always rise to be the strong woman you see. She's been hurt." Ruth's heart fell, torn between her anger toward Sarah and a deep surge of empathy. Memories flooded back like jagged waves. The struggles, her fight for recognition, the sacrifices, they were universal. But would understanding bridge the chasm? Would compassion suffice to mend the fractures? Just as she contemplated reaching out, uncertainty gripped her. What if acknowledging Sarah's plight shifted her own status? A pull towards vulnerability lurked in her mind. The juxtaposition of her life's work nestled uneasily against the pain of this new revelation. Somewhere between resentment and understanding danced the ghostly shadows of their pasts, threatening to entwine them in a cycle of hurt. Would Ruth find the courage to reshape the relationship, or would the intricate web of their sorrows continue tightening around them, preventing real healing? The stakes loomed larger than ever, and as the question lingered like a shroud, hope and fear waged a silent war in Ruth's heart. Ruth woke the next morning, the sun filtering through the kitchen window, casting soft light on the countertops. It felt like a new day, but the shadows of yesterday's confrontation clung to her like an unwelcome fog. She pushed aside her unease, determined to take charge of her emotions instead of letting them dictate her actions. Today would be different. She resolved to confront the confusion swirling within her. As she brewed her coffee, the bold scent filled the air, a small comfort in the tumult of her thoughts. What had Mark said about Sarah? She's been hurt. The words echoed, stirring something within Ruth, a hint of understanding that felt tenuous yet liberating. For years she had fought to earn respect. Now she would extend that respect to someone whose path had been difficult in its own right. With that resolve simmering, Ruth decided to visit her favorite local bookstore. The familiar pathway, flanked by blooming trees and friendly faces, offered a sense of solace. As she walked, she reflected on her own journey. Once a principal, guiding students through challenges, wrestling with authority while yearning for legitimacy, the memories both uplifted and weighed heavily upon her. At the bookstore, among the aisles of well-loved titles, Ruth felt a rush of nostalgia. Many stories had mirrored her struggle for recognition, but this was not about her. It was about creating a bridge to a woman she had perceived as a threat. Could she encourage Sarah to share her story, just as she had shared her own in the past? What tools could she use to foster dialogue? As Ruth picked up a book about empathy and understanding, thoughts collided. Wouldn't it be better to invite Sarah for coffee and an honest conversation? It felt like a risk, but perhaps courage lay in vulnerability. Could such a meeting ignite a flickering connection, bridging the gap forged from misunderstanding? A gnawing anxiety crept in, forcing her to weigh the possibilities. Would Sarah be willing to open up? Their history was riddled with barbed exchanges. Ruth had never extended an olive branch, yet both women had shared their versions of a difficult journey. Yes, they were different in many respects, but that didn't negate their shared humanity. Ruth's heart raced as she contemplated reaching out. The very act of putting herself on the line was an emblem of her growth. She was reclaiming agency, resolving to seize control over her narrative rather than allow Sarah's comments to define her. That evening she stood in her kitchen once more, adorned with freshly baked cookies for an elaborate peace offering. The warm scents enveloped her, and she took a deep breath, fortifying herself. She had decided to text Sarah for coffee, a simple proposition that was burgeoning with potential, a step into unknown territory, but a step forward nonetheless. As her finger hovered over the send button, doubt crept back in. Would she be met with defensiveness, or could this truly open a new chapter for them? The tension was palpable, a culmination of her baking and anticipating. Finally, she pressed send, and for a fleeting moment felt exhilaration mixed with trepidation. The next day, Sarah's response arrived. The brief words, hesitant yet positively laced, made Ruth's heart flutter with both hope and anxiety. "Sure, coffee sounds nice," it read, but the subtext echoed louder. Would their meeting unravel years of resentment or merely expose deeper wounds? While uncertainty loomed, Ruth felt invigorated. She was on the precipice of change. But just as she allowed herself to revel in the anticipation of what could come next, a new thought struck her with a chilling realization. Was she truly ready to face the truth about her own missteps, her own hidden vulnerabilities? Would she also unveil the parts she'd kept buried out of fear? The weight of everything hung heavy as she prepared for an encounter that could alter the course of their relationship forever. The stakes had never been higher, and the moment of truth was closing in. Ruth awoke the following morning, the sun rising with a hesitant brightness that seemed to echo her swirling feelings. Today was the day. Coffee with Sarah. The prospect felt monumental, yet unease gnawed at the edges of her resolve.
She could no longer ignore the weight of her own shortcomings as she pondered how best to approach their conversation. In her kitchen, the comforting ritual of brewing coffee provided a backdrop to her spinning thoughts. Each drip was a moment to reflect, a gentle reminder of her transformation from a guarded principal to a woman willing to embrace vulnerability. She dared to lift the veil of her past mistakes, but doing so meant confronting the fear she had kept hidden. What if, in revealing her own struggles, the conversation spiraled downward? Every exchange with Sarah had been tainted by defensiveness, judgment, and resentment, each word shared like a dagger. But maybe those daggers were also shields, protecting both women from deeper truths. If she could open her heart, perhaps Sarah would too. Ruth's fingers gripped the coffee mug tightly, her pulse racing as she considered that possibility. She dressed carefully, selecting her clothing with an unexpected sense of purpose. Her aim was to present herself as both confident and approachable. Each piece was selected not merely for aesthetics, but as a statement of her intent. This meeting was not about winning or losing. It was about connection, an opportunity for growth and shared understanding. By the time she arrived at the cafe, her heart drummed a frenetic rhythm. The atmosphere buzzed with patrons, studious students, and the rich aroma of brewing coffee enveloped her like a shroud of uncertainty. Ruth scanned the room, finally locking eyes with Sarah, who sat at a secluded table, fidgeting with her cup, her own apprehension evident in the way she clutched her drink. Ruth approached, her intentions clear but her emotions churning. As she sat, she noted the tension in Sarah's posture, mirroring her own. "Thanks for meeting me," she started, her voice steadier than she felt. "I wanted to talk about, well, us." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken histories. Sarah nodded, her expression unreadable but attentive. Ruth took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the years between them, of sharp words and unyielding barriers that had formed their relationship. "I know we haven't always seen eye to eye," Ruth continued, "and I've contributed to that. I've held on to my own frustrations without acknowledging yours, and I'm sorry. It felt surreal to express such honesty. In that moment, the storm inside her settled slightly, replaced by the steadiness of commitment to the truth. Sarah's brow furrowed slightly, and she held Ruth's gaze. "I wasn't expecting you to say that," she frowned, but there was a small, tentative softness beginning to break through. Ruth pressed on, determined to peel back the layers of mistrust. "I've spent so much time protecting my position, worrying about perceptions. I never thought about what brought you to feel resentment toward me." For a moment, Sarah's eyes shimmered with something Ruth couldn't quite decipher. Anger, sadness, vulnerability? But it propelled her. Ruth sensed that here lay a path to healing, one she was finally brave enough to traverse. After an agonizing pause, Sarah finally spoke, her voice a whisper. "I didn't know how to navigate my role. I felt like I was always in your shadow." Ruth's heart beat a little faster, not from fear, but from the recognition of shared struggle, each woman's scars vividly etched from similar battles against isolation, both fighting to find their footing in a rapidly changing world. As their conversation unfolded, Ruth could feel walls beginning to crack, but she was also forced to confront something deeper within herself. Did she truly have the strength to close the gaps between them, to face her own vulnerabilities in exchange for building this bridge? With every revelation, she found herself questioning if the cracks in her own defenses were wide enough to let in the light of understanding, or if they would swallow her whole. As they poured their thoughts out over steaming cups of coffee, Ruth realized she was at the cusp of a significant discovery, not just about Sarah, but about herself. The moment of truth was not only about what they could rebuild together, but whether Ruth could confront the insecurities that had long dictated her life. In that moment of raw honesty, a chilling awareness crept in once again. What if the path of reconciliation unveiled even more hidden aspects of herself that she had yet to confront? And was she ready to embrace that journey, wherever it might lead?
Suddenly, she felt an unshakable certainty. This conversation was just the beginning, setting the stage for revelations that would challenge every aspect of her identity. Ruth's heart pounded as the silence stretched between them, heavy with unsaid feelings. Finally, she broke it, emboldened by the glimmer of possibility. "Sarah, if you felt overshadowed, it wasn't my intention. I've always admired your abilities. I let my fear cloud that." The admission hung in the air, and she watched as Sarah's defensive posture relaxed slightly. There was a flicker of hope in Ruth's chest, a small ember begging to be fanned into flame. Maybe they could reshape this relationship, transform it into something supportive, something real. "It felt like you never noticed or wanted to notice," Sarah countered, her voice firm yet softer than Ruth remembered. "You were always concerned with the image you portrayed, and I couldn't figure out how to fit into that frame." Ruth's throat tightened. The truth stung, but she accepted it. She had built a facade of control, standing proudly as the principal, while simultaneously bruising the spirits of those meant to stand alongside her. "I've avoided vulnerability, which only deepened the divide," Ruth admitted, the words flowing as she began to peel back the layers of her persona. "I thought if I remained strong, I would gain respect, but all I did was build walls." A hesitant smile ghosted across Sarah's lips, and for a moment a bridge formed between them, a hint at understanding. "Maybe we both built walls in different ways, but that doesn't change how isolated I felt." Ruth leaned forward, passion igniting within her. "Let's change the narrative. Together we can reshape our environment, and I'm ready for it. I'm prepared to admit that I could have fostered a more collaborative spirit if I had prioritized honesty over appearances." The tension in Sarah shifted, slowly transforming into curiosity. "This isn't just about us anymore, is it? Your approach impacts everyone around us, teachers, students, even their families." That kind of vulnerability could set a precedent. Ruth felt a spark of responsibility wash over her. Reflecting on her own defensive patterns, she recognized the broader implications of her vulnerabilities. What they discussed transcended personal. It spoke to how they could build a nurturing environment school-wide, one that embraced openness. "Exactly," Ruth enthused. "Imagine us demanding honesty with our students, encouraging them to express themselves, not just conform. We could really start something new together." With each revelation, Ruth felt the air around them shift. Such clarity, the kind she had rarely experienced, ignited a latent ambition within her, fueled by the possibility of collective growth. But what would it mean to step into that role authentically? Fear whispered that risking this newfound brightness could plunge her back into darkness. Before Sarah could respond, the cafe door swung open, letting in a burst of chilly air. A little boy with sticky fingers laughed as he raced to his mother, pulling her from the shadows to the forefront. Watching their joy, Ruth swallowed heavily. A creeping realization dawned on her. If she wanted to foster a sense of community, she needed to confront her fears head on, not just personally, but professionally. As their conversation continued, she realized what lay ahead was the true test of her resilience, an exploration not only of her relationship with Sarah, but with her own fears of inadequacy. The turbulence of her internal world now mirrored the struggles she sought to address in her daily life. Was the vulnerability she craved for herself obtainable if she also wanted to transform others? "I can't go back to the way things were," Sarah declared, breaking the momentary silence, reclaiming the direction of their conversation. "But if we're truly starting fresh, I need you to let me in even more. It can't just be words, Ruth. Action speaks louder." An unexpected wave of adrenaline coursed through Ruth. This was the essence of the commitment she sought, not just to her words, but to a path marked with transparent engagement and collective healing. She nodded, heartbeat accelerating. In that instant, she sensed a profound shift.
Could they not only mend their relationship, but redefine the landscape of their school with this newfound paradigm, one rooted in honesty and collaboration? It felt terrifyingly audacious, yet exhilarating, standing on the precipice of extraordinary change. Ruth steeled herself, questioning whether she possessed the resolve to follow through on the possibilities laid bare before her. But the vision of what could emerge was a light she longed to embrace. As their laughter intertwined with the sounds of the cafe, Ruth felt the intensity of impending change shimmer in her chest. It would require more than dialogue. It demanded committed actions, actions that would pave the road ahead.
But deep down, an unsettling thought lingered. Did she truly have the strength to mold her future while confronting the ghosts that had long haunted her past? As Sarah leaned forward, ready to chart a course ahead, Ruth steeled herself for the next inevitable challenge that lay on the horizon. What lay ahead wouldn't just be about their reconciliation. It would challenge who Ruth was and compel her to confront her deepest insecurities if she intended to make the impact she envisioned. Ruth took a slow, deep breath, refocusing on Sarah's unwavering gaze. The warmth of the cafe washed over them, contrasting sharply with the swirling turmoil in her mind. Each heartbeat resonated with her fears and hopes, a dichotomy battling for dominance. She understood now that reshaping her environment required more than words. It demanded action, and perhaps most dauntingly, authenticity. "I've thought a lot about how I interact with the staff," Ruth began, her voice steady yet vulnerable. "I want to create a workspace that embraces open dialogue, but I need help. I don't want this to be just another initiative that fades away. Starting today, we need to implement a framework to encourage feedback. Regular meetings, student forums, you name it. The more voices we have, the stronger our community becomes." Ruth nodded, her resolve solidifying further. She envisioned gathering diverse opinions, listening actively, weaving them into the fabric of their school. It struck her. Vulnerability bred strength. The very act of admitting her limitations could draw others closer rather than push them away. This realization satisfied a longing within her to be more than just a leader. She wanted to inspire. But a shadow of doubt crept in. What if she failed? The specter of inadequacy, once familiar, taunted her, whispering that she was unworthy of this transformation. To silence it, she conjured an image of her students, their eyes bright with curiosity, their voices eager to be heard. They deserved a sanctuary where their thoughts mattered. "Let's start small," proposed Ruth, her thoughts racing ahead. "Perhaps we can host a brainstorming session next week, focusing on empathy and collaboration among students and teachers. It can be informal, a chance for everyone to express how they feel about the current environment." "Brilliant!" Sarah beamed, her energy infectious. "And not just students. What about parents? They often have insights that can help us understand how our school impacts family dynamics." As they began to sketch out plans, Ruth felt her conviction deepen. By intertwining the voices of teachers, students, and parents, she could create a tapestry of engagement that highlighted their diverse perspectives. It wouldn't be a quick fix. It would be an ongoing journey, one rooted in the very vulnerabilities she sought to embrace. Yet a tension simmered just below the surface. What if some staff members resisted this shift? Ruth's thoughts drifted to her long-standing colleagues, those who thrived under the old hierarchical system she had inadvertently upheld. The dread of confrontation gnawed at her insides. Could she withstand the pushback? The idea of facing their skepticism terrified her. "Ruth, are you okay?" Sarah's voice jolted her from her internal battle. "Yeah, sorry, just thinking. What if some people don't buy into this?" She hesitated, staring down at the coffee cup that felt oddly heavy in her hands. "I fear losing the respect I've built." Sarah leaned back, arms crossed, nodding thoughtfully. "Respect is earned through authenticity, not fear.
If they see you embracing vulnerability, it might inspire them to follow suit. Ruth held Sarah's gaze, fortified by her words, yet still wrestling with her insecurities. Could she actually lead this charge, open herself to possible critique and judgment from those she once sought to impress? The battle inside her raged on, but there was a stirring conviction rapidly eclipsing doubt. "Let's challenge each other," Ruth said suddenly, compelled by a rush of clarity. "If I falter or default to old habits, hold me accountable, and I'll do the same for you." The suggestion hung in the air, a pact forged in determination. For the first time, Ruth felt a symbiotic link forming, not just between her and Sarah, but with the entire school community. Yet the horizon loomed ominously dense with unknowns, a vast expanse dotted with both promise and fear. As the cafe's ambient noise rose, signaling the passage of time, Ruth recognized the urgency before them. Their proposed changes weren't meant for idle chatter, they required commitment. In that moment, she realized confronting her fears wasn't solely about internal revelations, but about rallying the courage to enact real change, a timeline drawn not in months, but in pivotal moments of action. As the conversations between them surged with energy, a profound question echoed in her mind. What if she discovered more about herself than she'd bargained for? And would it force her to confront not just professional adversities, but also the inner responses that had gripped her for so long? Standing in the soft light of her kitchen late that evening, Ruth felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The plans for the brainstorming session began to swirl in her mind like ingredients in a well-mixed batter. She grabbed a notepad, determined to outline her thoughts. Each word was a building block, connecting her visions for the school community. But her heart sunk slightly. Would she truly be able to engage her colleagues? Ruth replayed her past interactions, the cautious exchanges marked by polite nods and muted conversations. She had never taken the initiative to steer those dialogues beyond surface-level interactions.
The weight of her own self-doubt began to creep back in, casting a shadow over her enthusiasm. With a quick shake of her head, she forced herself back into focus. No more hesitations. She would be the change she wanted to see. Ruth brewed a cup of herbal tea, inhaling the calming aroma, trying to steady her nerves. She reminded herself that embracing vulnerability was her chosen path. Later that night, as Ruth settled into her favorite corner of the couch, notes and plans danced before her eyes. She thumbed through the pages, noting potential ground rules for the meeting. It was essential she created a space where even the shyest voice could shine. Then her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. "Are you ready?" Sarah's message flashed on the screen. Ruth paused, her throat tightening. "Ready?" She took a deep breath and typed a response. "I think so, but what if their feedback is overwhelmingly negative?" "Then we adapt. Every piece of feedback is a step toward growth. Remember, we're constructing something worthwhile together," came Sarah's encouraging reply. Constructing something worthwhile. The phrase resonated deeply, igniting a flicker of determination within her. Ruth set the phone aside and began to draft an introductory speech. A small voice inside her reminded her that she had the power to influence their environment and cultivate a culture of openness. Yet the looming specter of critique and potential resistance still lingered. In those quiet hours, Ruth envisioned the different reactions she might encounter. What would her veteran colleagues think? Would they dismiss her ideas and stifle the energy she hoped to cultivate? The prospect of facing them felt like standing on the edge of a high dive, both thrilling and terrifying. With each word she wrote, her inner narrative shifted slightly. Rather than fearing confrontation, she recognized it as a possibility for dialogue,
a way to bridge gaps rather than deepen divides. If we can model vulnerability, we can lead without fear, she whispered to herself. The following morning, she woke earlier than usual, fueled by a newfound clarity. Her personal mantra for the day echoed in her mind. Lead with authenticity. If she faltered, it would be an opportunity for learning, not an end. As she arrived at school, the hallways buzzed with the familiar morning energy of students. Ruth felt both the weight of expectation and the thrill of purpose. This was it. She was stepping into a new chapter, a moment bursting with potential. Her first meeting with the staff was scheduled for the following day. It wouldn't just be an exchange, it would be the inception of something remarkable, a chance to redefine how they communicated and collaborated. However, a lingering uncertainty clawed at her resolve. What if the unveiling was met with ridicule rather than support? Would they see her intentions or doubt her competence? Ruth clenched her fists, steeling herself.
More than ever, she needed to own her place as both a leader and a learner. As the bell rang and students filtered into classrooms, Ruth hesitated before stepping into her office. Tomorrow was crucial. It held the potential for significant transformation. She needed to be prepared. One final thought loomed large. What if they pushed back? Would she have the courage to stand firm, to diffuse opposition, not through authority, but through connection? Her heart raced as the sun set beyond the school grounds, casting long shadows in the hallways. The moment of truth swiftly approached, and Ruth could feel the stakes rising. Would she emerge as the leader she aspired to be, or would this journey unravel her? Ruth awoke to the soft, uncertain light filtering through her curtains, a reminder that today was not just another day, but a pivotal moment in her professional journey. She sat up in bed, pressing her palms together in an attempt to quell the palpable tension swirling inside her. Her thoughts raced. What if the meeting took a turn she hadn't anticipated? The risks loomed larger than her previous fears, but just as quickly she forced herself to embrace the potential for success. In the shower, she repeated her mantra, lead with authenticity. Each drop of water felt like a cleansing of her self-doubt, as if it could wash away her hesitation along with the remnants of last night's worries. Ruth emerged from the steam not only refreshed, but resolute, ready to embrace whatever came her way. At work, the atmosphere buzzed with the usual morning hustle, but Ruth could feel the weight of her own expectations pressing down on her. She walked through the hallways, glimpsing into classrooms where students engaged in lively discussions, and an ember of inspiration ignited further within her. If students could express their thoughts so openly, why couldn't she spark the same encouragement among her colleagues? Upon entering her office, the clock ticked loudly, each second a reminder of the upcoming staff meeting. Ruth positioned herself at her desk, notes sprawled before her like a roadmap to success. But doubt crept in again. Would her ideas resonate? Would they see her as competent or an intruder overstepping her bounds? Steeling her resolve, she pored over her notes and formulated a few key questions, hurdles to clear, but also invitations for dialogue. Each question would not only gauge her colleagues' thoughts, but encourage an exchange that might breathe life into their stagnant routines. Her plan evolved from merely presenting ideas to a curated experience where every voice matters. When the meeting began, an unexpected harmony of nerves and excitement surged through her. The room filled with familiar faces, both encouraging and intimidating. Ruth mustered a smile, feeling her heart race as she began. It was as if time paused. She had no choice but to step forward into the unknown. "Good morning, everyone," she started,
her voice steady despite the tremor of her heart. Today, I want to talk about how we can enhance our collaborative efforts and create a culture that truly values every perspective. The initial reactions were predictable. A few colleagues nodded while others exchanged skeptical glances. Butterflies swarmed in her stomach, but Ruth pressed on, introducing her ground rules for the meeting with growing confidence. When it came time for feedback, she opened the floor, cringing at the first volley of critiques from one of the veteran teachers. His words felt like daggers aimed directly at her ideas. "I don't think this is necessary, and honestly, it seems too idealistic." Ruth flinched inwardly, but keenly sensed the tension around the table. She had prepared for resistance. Now was her moment to pivot. Instead of bristling at the criticism, she seized the opportunity to dive deep. "What makes you believe collaboration isn't necessary?" she asked, her voice firm yet inviting. The unexpected question broke the tension, shifting the discussion. Colleagues began to share their own experiences, gradually revealing their hesitations. Rather than veering into a defensive stance, Ruth found herself facilitating an authentic dialogue. She recognized the power of listening as her peers laid bare their concerns and aspirations. As the meeting continued, responses evolved, revealing hidden layers of frustration, but also igniting a desire for genuine change. Ruth felt the connection strengthening among them, the breath of collaborative enthusiasm filling the room, something she had longed for but never dared to hope for. With the meeting concluding on an unexpectedly positive note, Ruth exhaled in relief and satisfaction. The outcome felt significant, a potential shift toward a culture she envisioned. But a small voice in the back of her mind reminded her that this was merely the beginning. As her colleagues dispersed, she caught sight of the troubled expression of the veteran teacher lingering in the doorway. He approached her, hesitation heavy in his gait, the air thick with unspoken tension. "We need to talk," he said, his tone unsettling. Ruth's heart sank. This might be the crucial conversation that either deepened their divide or opened the door to greater understanding. Facing what lay ahead would demand bravery, but the possibility of unlocking a deeper relationship with her colleagues tantalized her. It was time to confront the emerging conflict head-on. The path forward lay concealed beneath layers of fear and resistance, and she was determined to unravel it. The insistence in the veteran teacher's gaze held Ruth in place, momentarily paralyzing her senses. It was a familiar yet intimidating stare, a fusion of concern and skepticism. "I was surprised by your approach today," he began. His voice was low, almost guarded. "Where did this sudden interest in collaboration come from?" Ruth's heart quickened. This confrontation could either reinforce her position or topple the fragile momentum she had built, but she wouldn't flinch. "I've realized it's crucial for us, not just as individuals, but as a united faculty. If we want to inspire our students, we need to model that kind of cooperation among ourselves." His forehead creased as he processed her fervor. "And you think it'll happen just like that?" He gestured dismissively, the action both defensive and protective. "No, I don't think it will come easily," she quickly interjected, sensing his criticism transform into an opportunity. "But change rarely does. We can't expect success without confronting our reluctance to engage openly." A flicker of surprise crossed his features, followed by a reluctant nod. It was a subtle shift, but one that emboldened Ruth. The conversation had deepened, unveiling a connection she hadn't anticipated. "What if we're too comfortable in our routines to even see how collaboration might benefit us?" she challenged gently. "What will we do to break free?" For a long moment, the veteran teacher seemed lost in thought, perhaps wrestling with his own internal conflict. Ruth's pulse thumped in her ears, aware that every second felt crucial. If he lashed out or let his doubts take hold, her hard-won ground could crumble. Finally, he leaned closer, vulnerability softening his demeanor. "I've been at this a long time, Ruth. Maybe I'm afraid of what change means. We have our strategies, but maybe there is a point to what you're suggesting." His admission washed over her like a rush of encouragement. She seized on it. "And if we could redefine our strategies together, incorporate our unique experiences into a unified approach, we could create something that benefits everyone, including the students we care about." Ruth felt the poignant strength of her own convictions shine through. It was about more than just winning a debate. It was about growth and nurturing relationships, a partnership of sorts that would bring down the walls that had formed between them. "Why don't we take the next steps together? Invite others to our next discussion," she proposed, each word laced with determination. "This can be a collaborative effort, one we can lead hand in hand." He hesitated, but then nodded again, this time with a richness of understanding. "All right, let's give it a shot, but you have to promise to listen as much as you talk." Relief flooded Ruth as they exchanged glances thick with mutual respect. A fragile bridge had been built. Yet beneath that exhilaration loomed doubt. Had she truly unlocked a transformative opportunity, or was she merely entering a murky territory fraught with traps awaiting her? The prospect both excited and unnerved her. As the meeting wound down, she returned to her desk, her mind racing. The public facade of success concealed a torrent of fears. What if the discussion spiraled out into disagreements? And what of her previous experiences with defensiveness and confrontation? The weight of these questions bore heavily upon her, but resolve flickered to light in her chest, urging her forward. She might be stepping into unknown territory, but she was no longer walking alone. Suddenly her phone buzzed, temporarily snapping her from her thoughts. The screen flashed a message from a colleague she hardly expected to hear from, hinting at another meeting, a more informal gathering that could explore the subject further. Should she dive deeper into the unknown, or retreat and cling to her comfort zone? This was the moment for her to decide. Ruth stared at the screen, her heart a cadence of uncertainty and excitement. The next steps she took could very well determine the evolution of her journey, unveiling deeper insights she had yet to grasp. Did she have the courage to embrace what lay ahead, whatever the unpredictability it entailed? And with that, she pressed reply, ready to cement her commitment to growth. The day ahead shimmered with possibilities. Now all she needed was to muster the bravery to see them through. The informal gathering was set on a nondescript Tuesday afternoon, a day too easily forgotten amid the flurry of long lesson plans and faculty meetings. Ruth arrived late, her pulse racing as she pushed open the door. The room was buzzing with the chatter of colleagues, most of whom were already comfortable in their cliques. Standing at the entrance, she felt a wave of familiarity wash over her, mixed with undesired nostalgia for simpler times when engagement felt easier, yet distinctly absent now. "Hey, Ruth!" A cheerful voice pulled her from her reverie. It was Anna, a new member of the faculty. "We've just started discussing ideas for our upcoming literature unit. Come join us." Ruth straightened her shoulders, shaking off the hesitations. This was her chance to dismantle barriers. "Thanks, Anna. I'd love to." She wove through the huddled groups, every step a small victory against her doubt. Taking a seat next to Anna, she joined in on the discourse. The ideas floated from table to table, expanding with the water cooler ease of informal conversation. Ruth's energy began to rise as the topics morphed from method to personal anecdotes, and laughter threaded through the discussions like a lively current. Yet a deeper dialogue about collaboration remained absent, and the lurking edges of her uncertainty hung like shadows. She caught herself often, bringing conversations back around to what she felt was crucial. What if we think about how our approaches can interlink? What if we examine student outcomes together based on our diverse methods? More than once she faced unenthusiastic replies. The skepticism crawled back, knitting doubts like a ghost of yesteryears. "Ruth, it's just not how we do things." an older colleague remarked. "Why change what already works?"
The question landed heavily in the air, and silence enveloped the room momentarily, broken only by the hum of the overhead lights. Ruth blinked, astonished that this was still an obstacle. But isn't that the very problem? What if our students need more than just what works? A raw energy surged through her words, yet inside she felt the familiar claws of fear gripping her soul. What if nobody responded? What if she was perceived as an outlier? Nevertheless, refusing to back down, she locked her gaze onto her colleagues, willing them to see the potential, the possibilities simmering beneath the surface. "Let's just try something," Anna chimed in, breaking the tension. "Ruth has good points. Maybe we can run a small pilot project together. Like, see how different strategies play within the same unit." The collective murmurs of uncertainty hovered like wisps of fog. Discussions fragmented again until a determined voice spoke up, one Ruth hadn't expected. "Let's do it. We'll lose nothing venturing into new territory, and it may inspire us," the veteran teacher from earlier affirmed. Ruth felt an electric surge of gratitude wash over her, not just for the recognition, but for the realization that she had begun to ignite a flicker of willingness among her peers. The trembling doubt began to morph into a burgeoning excitement. As ideas flew, Ruth felt each one taking root, growing strong as they beckoned toward unexplored prospects. Conversations shifted from skepticism to enthusiastic considerations, and the seeds of potential were being sown. Yet, as mutual enthusiasm filled the air, a small voice still edged into her thoughts. Was she truly equipped for this? Could she ensure the conversation didn't devolve into chaos? Doubt might linger, but Ruth could feel the firm foundation of progress forming beneath the shaky surface. Her commitment wasn't just about collaboration anymore. It was about her evolution as an educator, a facilitator, a guide. If she could breed this new approach within an environment thick with resistance, perhaps the change would ripple outwards, influencing student engagement as well. The meeting drew to a close, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Colleagues promised to bring their best methods and open minds next time. As she walked away, Ruth stole a glance at her reflection in the glass doors. Her heart was lighter, but the reflection also bore the weight of responsibility. The next meeting would not just be about sharing, but leading. Would she rise to meet that responsibility? Ruth wondered if she was ready not only to accept, but embrace the challenges ahead. And just as the thought solidified, a chilling reminder surfaced. Her own insecurities could be the very barriers she fought against. The final challenge loomed before her. Would she confront the inner conflicts that had long held her back, or let them shadow her journey? With a deep breath, she resolved to tackle not only the external walls of reluctance, but the internal ones too. The real question lingered. What would triumph over fear, her determination to grow, or the haunting echoes of doubt still within her? Ruth stood before the classroom door, a wave of anticipation surging through her as she prepared for the much-anticipated meeting with her colleagues. Today was the day she would present their collaborative project, a bridge constructed from the discussions they had engaged in over the weeks, transforming initial skepticism into a cohesive vision of growth. She could almost feel the tangible size of her achievements. She had come from a place defined by conflict to one where her leadership now resonated with connection and innovation. Gathering her notes, she recalled the nerve-wracking moments of the informal gathering when she had first dared to voice her desire for change. The collective reluctance she encountered almost crushed her spirit, yet those very moments had birthed resilience, the kind forged through vulnerability and empathy. Now, standing here, Ruth felt fortified by the transformative journey she had undertaken, both personally and professionally.
As she entered the room, a warm atmosphere greeted her, layered with anticipation, excitement, and the undeniable undertone of collaboration. Colleagues were earnestly discussing their next steps, sharing their methods and strategies, every voice interlinked, building off one another. It felt electric. This was what she had yearned for, the realization of a thriving community. "Good morning, everyone," Ruth began, her voice unwavering. She felt the butterflies fluttering in her stomach, slowly transitioning into determination. "Today, I want to celebrate the integration of our unique approaches toward the literature unit. We've gathered diverse insights and ready to implement strategies that can set a precedent for future collaborations." The room buzzed with enthusiasm as Ruth presented their collective plan, each point reinforcing the strength derived from their individual contributions. The dynamic shift was palpable. Her colleagues leaned in, engaged and receptive. They were no longer individuals operating in silos, but a team energized by shared purpose, one that sought to instill genuine curiosity and empathy within their students. Mid-presentation, a voice interjected, one that had challenged her relentlessly in the past. The veteran teacher, still cautious but visibly transformed, spoke up. "I must admit, Ruth, this is more than I expected from you. Not only did you lead us to this point, but you also listened and encouraged us to contribute. It's refreshing." Ruth noted his words, a validation that underscored her growth. She smiled, realizing this was not just a moment of triumph for her professional strategies, but a confirmation of her evolution from a recognized but distant leader to a nurturing mentor who could facilitate real dialogue. The meeting progressed with participation growing more animated, the air thick with ideas and possibilities. If there had been any remnants of doubt left in Ruth's heart, they dissolved in the shared laughter and light-hearted banter, a reassurance that they were creating something memorable together. When the meeting concluded to enthusiastic applause, Ruth felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment wash over her. Every ounce of effort she had poured into transforming her relationships and perspectives had yielded palpable change. In the days that followed, additional brainstorming sessions unfolded, learning exquisite lessons in adaptability and the profound strength of community. The school atmosphere transformed, becoming a sanctuary of open communication where every opinion mattered and creativity flourished. Lastly, external validation of her efforts arrived. Parents reached out, praising the new dynamic that encouraged their children's voices to be heard and respected. Satisfaction enveloped Ruth as she embraced her newfound confidence, not entitlement, but solid competence rooted in collaboration and connection. She was no longer just a principal. She had become a leader who demonstrated the power of resilience and vulnerability. This was her specific achievement. Not only had she reshaped her working environment, but she had also unearthed her true self in the process. With this fulfillment came a formidable recognition. Ruth was now a beacon of possibility in her school community. This is the moment for you to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel and ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now, it matters. Comment below your reactions and theories about this ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to support the channel and acknowledge the power of personal growth.